Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar today. And thank you to Julie Klaus from SBA who's joined us. Julie is truly an expert in these programs, and the advice she gives you can really count on, you can trust her. And thank you to my staff for helping to put this together. First of all, I just want to remind everyone that Congress took an unprecedented action in passing the CARES Act. This $2 trillion piece of legislation was designed to do a couple of things. One, it was to make sure that working people were able to have money to spend and have a job to come back to after this pandemic is over. It focused on small businesses, making sure they had access to important capital to keep people employed, to keep their doors, to reopen their doors when this is over. And it focused on unemployment for people who are furloughed or lose their job. And it expanded the unemployment program to include people that have never been included in unemployment insurance before, self-employed individuals and people in the gig economy. It also focused and spent a lot of money on our healthcare providers. This pandemic is health driven, so it's not going to end, and we're not going to get people back to work and the economy going again until we're able to solve and fully address the healthcare part of this. So it spent a lot of money providing help for healthcare providers at both the state and the local level. It also provided help to state and local governments. And as you've heard, that was the third piece of legislation that we did. We're now working on the fourth. And originally, it was thought that the fourth piece of legislation would be stimulus legislation that would help get the economy going again, making sure that we got as close to full employment as possible. Things such as infrastructure funding, renewable energy funding, things of that nature. Resilient programs going forward to match our investment in our economy that put people to work. However, because this pandemic has caused problems bigger than anyone has expected, it appears that the fourth piece of legislation will be more of an expansion of the CARES Act, the third piece of legislation. So we're continuing to work through this. There's been some glitches that have shown up, and that's not to be unexpected. When you do something this big, this quick, you can always count on unexpected consequences. So those will be addressed. And again, we want to make sure we get money into the hands of the people of our great country, so they are in a stable situation, and that jobs will come back once the pandemic's over. We've seen major problems in regard to some small business owners' ability to have access to capital. Some of these have been caused because of cap restrictions on lenders that were brought about because of past poor performance by the lender. We're trying to resolve that. We're trying to figure out how to do workarounds so people who have been customers of these institutions can have access to capital. There's some industries that are different than others. The restaurant industry, for instance, an industry that employs a lot of people and has its own food chain, if you will. If the restaurants aren't open and aren't preparing meals, people who grow the groceries they don't have access to a market. The people that provide the linen and all of the other things that go into that community are all displaced. So we're trying to figure our way through all of these. But I know every one of you, and I think we have about 330 people on this webinar, I know you all have questions and probably unique to your situation. So I want to get to that. So let me start by, let me tell you first, if you have a question, go to the bottom of your screen to the Q&A function, and you can type your question into that section, and then we'll get to it. Put your first name, where you're from, and your question, and we'll try and answer all the questions that come to us today. And with that, I'd like to introduce Julie Klaus from Small Business Administration, who will make a presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Katie of my staff, who will regulate or who will monitor the question portion. So Julie, again, thank you, and let me turn it over to you to give your presentation.
Thank you, Congressman Thompson, and thank you to your team too for putting this together today and giving us a chance to talk. I'm going to start share my screen. Talk more about the programs. I am going to do a quick overview and then try to leave a significant time for the questions and answers, because I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I really appreciate the chance to get out and talk to you. I know you all have been bombarded with lots of information from all kinds of sources. So I do always like to tell people that, the SBA website for our programs is like a great resource for you and a place to go to get information. And it's updated daily. So if you haven't looked at it in a while, you might want to come back and take a look, because we are pushing out information and updates and answers to questions, FAQs and whatnot, as quickly as we are able. And so with that said, I'm going to speak to you today and kind of give you, the updates and what I know as of today. So what I like to do is also talk about the different types of assistance. So the PPP program has gotten a lot of publicity, but there's some other products and programs out there too that I want people to be aware of. And as a business owner, then you can have all the information and you can make some informed decisions about which of these benefits are going to be most advantageous for you to pursue. So I've kind of put them into two buckets. First is like this debt deferment or relief bucket. So for those of you who may have an existing SBA disaster loan, perhaps you were a victim of one of the wildfires or other issues that have happened in the last couple of years, we have automatically deferred your payments on those existing disaster loans through December 31st of this year. So that's automatically happened. You don't have to do anything. That's done for you. Likewise, if you have existing SBA debt that's in one of our other programs, like our 7A program, our 504 program, or our microloan program, those lenders have the ability to defer payments as well. So in order to engage that, please do talk to your lender. That lender will do the paperwork and the processing they need behind the scenes to make that happen for you. The new program, as a result of the CARES Act, is this SBA Debt Relief Program. And this one I think is, I'm always kind of surprised it doesn't get as more publicity than it is. But it enables you, if you have an existing 7A loan, or if you take out a 7A loan between now and September 27th, SBA will pay the principal and interest on that loan for 6 months. So the way that you tap into that, if you already have an existing 7A loan, is to, again, go talk to your lender. We have messaged out to them, some processes and things they need to do behind the scenes in order to tap into this and get the payments from SBA on your loan. So do want to make you aware of that. But now we'll talk about loans, because that's what most of the questions I'm sure are about. 3 different products, if you will, in this bucket. There is an Express Bridge Loan, and this is from SBA's Express lender, so it's a special designation among our lender pool, to do very quick loans, very streamlined process using the lender's paperwork, and they can do a loan up to $25,000. And this is kind of meant to be gap funding so that they can get you money quickly, maybe while you're waiting for another loan or other financing to come through. But the 2 big funds I want to talk to you more about are Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, including the advance of that up to $10,000. So Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, this is basically a guaranteed loan from SBA to the lender. So in order to engage with this program, you do need to visit a lender. Right now, all SBA's current 7A lenders are authorized to participate, although not all of them have elected to participate. And to that effect, we do have an online tool on our website to help you try to find one of these lenders that is participating in PPP specifically. And also, as we speak, my team, we're out contacting our local banks to try to figure out who is participating and how they're participating, so that we can hopefully educate you, the business community, a little bit better. So if you hear a lot of dings on my computer, that's the responses from the banks. So this program is for 8 weeks, up to 8 weeks of payroll costs, and that includes benefits. And then a portion of other non-payroll costs, such as mortgage or interest on mortgage, rent and utilities. So the payroll cost definition is broad. It includes salary, wages, those kinds of things, as long as it's annualized cap, though, of 10,000 or 100,000 per employee. And then also benefits. So if you have sick leave, if you have healthcare premiums that you pay, insurance premiums, other retirement benefits, and then state and local taxes that are assessed on compensation. All of those can be rolled into the payroll cost bucket for this purposes of this program. And what's more is, if the total cost or total value of your loan, if at least 75% of that total loan amount is used for your payroll expenses, we can forgive that loan. So let me go into the next slide to talk a little bit more details. As long as you're a small business or a nonprofit and you are eligible to participate, their maximum loan size on this is $10 million, and the interest rate is 1% with a term of 2 years. And we are deferring payments for up to 6 months. This program is unique if you're used to any other SBA borrowing, because there is 100% guarantee to the banks from SBA. We don't require any collateral, any sort of personal guarantee, and no fees. So you as a borrower should not be charged or paying any fees. Again, this program is designed to help you either retain your existing employees, or if you had to let them go, to be able to bring them back and rehire them. And if you're able to do that, and at least 75% of those costs are payroll of this loan, are payroll attributed, you can have the loan forgiven. So I'm going to quickly go through EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, as well. To contrast with the PPP, EIDL is actually a loan directly from SBA. So no bank involved, you go directly to SBA, and we do have an online portal, online application that is dedicated to receiving the interest for this. These are working capital loans for any small business or a nonprofit who has suffered some sort of injury, economic injury, as a result of COVID-19. And because it's a working capital loan, you can use it to pay pretty much your basic operating costs. These can include payroll, like PPP, can include rent, any of your other accounts payable, utilities, anything like that that you have to pay as an ongoing business. And these are the bills you probably could have paid, but for the effects of COVID-19 on your business. This program does have a cap, a loan of $2 million, and it is also available for deferred payments as well, up to 12 months. And we also have a 3.75% interest rate if you're a small business, and a 2.75% interest rate if you're a nonprofit. Those loans right now are being amortized over 30 years. There is potentially a collateral requirement, but again, it's not something to stress over. If your value of your loan is $25,000 or less, SBA will not ask for any collateral whatsoever. If the loan is over $25,000, we will ask the business to pledge available collateral. But in this circumstance, if there is a lack of collateral, SBA will not decline this loan for that purpose. So I know there's a lot of businesses that maybe only have your computer equipment and your office furniture, and that's okay. Lack of collateral is not going to be a reason not to be approved for this loan. This loan is, and the other enhancement with this loan is the EIDL Advance. You may have heard this came out of the CARES Act. So as of March 30th, then when the new application was launched, we included the opportunity to also apply for this EIDL advance. And this is an advanced loan, meaning it should come out a little bit faster than the rest of the money, of up to $10,000. So beginning March 30th, you filled out the online application. You had the ability to check a box that said, yes, please also consider me for the EIDL advance of up to $10,000. Oh, and there's a typo on there. But if you applied prior to March 30th and you used either the old online application or you did paper forms that you mailed in or emailed in, you are still eligible for this EIDL advance. And I encourage you to go into the online application and complete it and check the box. And then you will also be considered for this EIDL advance of up to $10,000. And SBA will marry up your existing application with this new one. You won't lose your place in line in the queue for processing, but it's the best way to tap into this EIDL advance if you're interested in that tranche of money as well. If you're a small business, a small by our size standards, you will probably qualify for this program. There are a couple industries or business activities of which might render you ineligible, and the list that you see in front of you is taken directly from the application. So gambling concerns, that is, if you have more than 1/3 of your revenue derived from legal gambling activities, you may not be eligible. Likewise, any illegal activities, and this is illegal at the federal level. So because we're in California, I do point out that cannabis industry is not legal at the federal level. So unfortunately, they're not eligible for this program. However, I do know there are state programs and other programs that if you are a cannabis industry, we can connect you with so you can tap into support from other channels. If you're delinquent on federal debt and don't have any sort of workout plan or other things, that could be an issue that we'll have to talk to you about. And also, if you're engaged in lobbying or some other activities, that's not allowed, and those are not allowable expenses either under the EIDL loan program. So this one, if you, there's a new online application. This is kind of a screenshot of what it looks like. So you just kind of have some familiarity of what you're looking for on the website. Again, this is 100% through SBA. We will take in the application, we will process it, and we will disperse the funds directly. So when you fill out this application, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to be asked some questions. First set, am I a small business? Under what category? Second one are those questions I went through. Make sure you're not engaged in any of the illegal activities or excuse me, no illegal activities, but no ineligible activities. And then if you check no, you get into the application itself, and it's just a series. You see a nice workflow of questions. You just answer everything online. These little red bars to the next on the side of the input, those will all flip to green as soon as you complete it and submit it, and then you'll know you can advance to the next screen. At the end, when you hit submit, you should get immediately a confirmation and a number, and it says, thank you, you have successfully submitted, and please keep that application number because that's going to be your reference point in the system should we need to go in and the disaster team go in and look up anything later on. So I just wanted to also iterate that, despite the shelter in place and the social distancing practices we're all adhering to, SBA and all of our resource partners are still open for business. We're still here to help you. There's a lot of information coming at you and a lot of questions that I'm sure you have. And you can always engage with one of our business advisors. All the advising services are free of charge. So whether it's SBDC, SCORE, our Women Business Center, or VBOC, Veteran Business Outreach Center, all of these counselors are available to you free of charge, and they're available by phone and email to tap into. You can also connect with us in other ways through social media and through our newsletter. And then I'll just end with the end slide, is kind of just some links to additional information. You don't have to scribble down this furiously. You only remember sba.gov. When you go in there, you'll see access immediately to the portal to learn to check out the Paycheck Protection Program, EIDL, the debt relief, and all the other programs. So that is a very quick overview. I'll open it up, I guess, for some questions now.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. And now I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and she can moderate these calls.
All right, so just a reminder as we're going through this, if you have questions, please use the question and answer feature at the bottom of your screen. Something else to be aware of is you can like questions. So if you see a question that someone has asked that you would like us to answer, please like that so that we know there's a lot of interest in that question. Okay, so Julie and Mike, the first question is, what is the turnaround time from application to receive the funds from this loan?
So I think for the economic injury disaster loan, the goal for the EIDL advance is to get that out in a matter of days. The rest of the program, I would say, because of the intense demand, I would give it at least 4 weeks. Hopefully it'll start to go a little faster, but I would benchmark at least 4 weeks. For the Paycheck Protection Program, because that's delivered through our lending partners, that's a really great question to ask them. I'm not sure how long their processing is taking, and it might vary a little bit between from bank to bank. Because it's brand new, I don't even have like a historical data that I can rely on in this case. I know they're working to do this as quickly as possible, but can it be done inside of a week? Maybe, but I don't want to make promises for the banks. So it'd be a great question to ask your lender when you submit.
All right, next question. This is one that's being liked by the most people. It says, will these PowerPoint slides be available for distribution to us?
So it definitely can make some information available to you, whether it's this PowerPoint or at least the significant information. So I'm happy to work with the Congressman's office to make sure we get that to you.
Great, and we have information as well. So anyone who's interested in that, let me know, and we can get it to you.
Great. The next question is, what does this loan program, offer self-employed people such as artists, yoga teachers, etc.? Please be specific.
So if you are self-employed, you are eligible for both programs. So it's, the Paycheck Protection Program is narrowly focused more on payroll and those associated costs, and then a little bit for, if there's rent or utilities. The EIDL program is more broad because it covers more business expenses. So I think, everybody's needs to kind of sit down and look at what your actual needs are for your specific business and run through. I would even itemize all those expenses and kind of map them out. And then you can kind of, run the numbers yourself and figure out, do I have a lot of payroll and associated costs, or do I have a lot of other costs? And that might guide you to which program is better, or potentially a combination of both. So as long as you don't duplicate the same needs in both buckets, you are eligible to apply for both, so long as you keep the needs separate, the what you're funding or what your specific need is separate.
Awesome. Okay, the next question is, someone said, we have applied for an EIDL. How can we check on the status of our application?
So right now, I don't believe the Customer Service Center is able to do that, but I'm hoping later on this week they will be able to actually go into the system and check the status for you. I unfortunately don't have access to that system, but you can try. I would try the customer service line right now and see if they're able to check in real time for you. If not, they can probably get back to you.
Great. So some people are wondering if they have a small business, but they don't have any other employees, so they don't have a payroll, are they eligible to apply for this?
Yes. So obviously your analysis is going to look a little different. It depends on how you normally pay yourself. If it would read through the, there's a set of guidance, there's interim rule, and then we now just supplemented it last night with some additional FAQs that are on our website. and you can read a little bit more detail about it or talk to the lender, but you can look at how you report yourself on your tax returns and what kind of net income you have, and you can use those numbers in your loan application.
Great. So another question that people are asking is, what happens when the $350 billion allocation for this segment of the legislation is exhausted? So what happens when we're out of the money, I guess?
I think that one's for you.
I'll take a shot at that. You know, as I mentioned, the fourth bill originally was going to be a stimulus bill, but it's becoming clear that we're going to run out of money in bill number 3. So right now, there's work being done to expand this, and I fully suspect there'll be additional funds programmed.
Despite the rumors, there is still money in the program right now. So in the PPP and both programs, actually. So we haven't hit our caps yet.
There's money there, but there's a tremendous demand for this,
Yes.
more so than I think anyone had anticipated. So this program will continue to be tweaked as we go along.
We appreciate your support, Congressman.
All right, next question. A lot of people are wondering about the difference between having an employee versus having independent contractors. So can you kind of talk about the differences and if they're still eligible?
Yes. So under the PPP program, the rule does indicate that if you're obviously all employees, all wages, but if you have 1099 contractors, that you are supporting, those cannot be included in payroll costs right now. The rule does indicate that those cannot be included in the payroll costs, and they cannot be part of a forgivable portion of the loan. And the reason for that is because those 1099 contractors are eligible to apply for the program in their own right. However, under the EIDL program, that you may include those costs, because remember, that's a working capital loan. And so if you have 1099 contractors that are still performing work or that you're still utilizing, you can certainly include have those costs covered in the EIDL program. And I know there's some other very unique circumstances with regards to 1099, and there's just, as of last night, some clarifying language that was put out in the FAQs. So if you fall into one of these really unique situations, I do encourage you to look at the rule also, and the supplemental, the FAQs, because that might address some of your very specific questions. And if not, you can always come back to us and to SBA, and we'll try to address your very specific circumstance.
All right. Okay, so some people are being told that they can only apply for the PPP or the EIDL program, but not both. Can you talk about, is that true? What should they do?
So we did get clarification on that late last week, and you are able to apply for both as long as you don't duplicate benefits. So we give this concept of not getting financing for the same reason for multiple sources. So that's a concept that's existed in our disaster program for a long time. So there are circumstances where people could apply for both and get funding under both, as long as they're covering different expenses or have different financial needs. So since Paycheck Protection Plan is narrowly focused on payroll, you may want to have payroll expenses under that and other expenses under the EIDL program. But as long as you don't duplicate benefits, you should be able to apply for both.
Cool. Another question that we're getting a lot is, I guess, how to work with their bank if their bank is being a little bit difficult with this process. For example, some people are expressing frustration with Wells Fargo. I don't know if you have any advice for how to go about this process.
Right. I mean, because the banks that are already existing SBA 7(a) lenders have the option on whether they want to participate in PPP. So I know that that's causing some challenges for borrowers. Couple words of advice, I guess, or guidance. I know we are actively behind the scenes trying to work with the lending community to both expand the types of lenders that we bring into this program and can offer the loan, and then also work with the ones that that may have some other challenges, whether it's internal bank policy or other things, and trying to get as many people and many lenders to be able to participate as possible. We are onboarding new lenders for this program as well. And what I'm doing with my team here in Northern California is doing some bank outreach so that we can talk to our local lenders and find out what they're doing, how they're choosing to offer the program, and so that we can have some better insight to talk to our Northern California small businesses. And then there's also a tool on the SBA website under the PPP program where you can type in your zip code and it'll spit back to you lenders that are participating in PPP. I will caveat that we're trying to keep that as up to date as possible, but it's not necessarily updated in real time. But that's also another resource if you're struggling to find a lender who's participating.
Julie, if I could ask you to expand on that a little bit. Some of the concerns that I'm hearing from my constituents are twofold. One, as Katie mentioned, Wells Fargo is a problem because they've been capped on what they can, how far they can participate because of past poor banking practices. And then they've done some things to favor their larger customers, and this is at the expense of smaller customers. And then some of my constituents, their banks aren't participating, and the banks that are only participating with customers that have a relationship with that bank. What is someone supposed to do whose banking relationship is with someone that's not participating, or their banking relationship is with Wells Fargo, and they can't get the help? Where do they go, and how do we help get them into a new lender's queue so they can get the help that they need to keep their business going and their employees on board?
Yes, exactly. So I do want to make it clear that, I get it. You want to use the bank you might have an existing business relationship with, but you're not obligated. Through this program does not obligate you to use that lender. So if you're having challenges
but the banks themselves are not taking on new customers. So you may not be obligated to use your existing bank, but you're precluded by the banking community from going to a new bank. That's what we need to figure out. We need to be able to identify resources for business people to be able to access these lending institutions to get the loans that they need.
Right, and that's why we've reached out to our local, at least our Northern California banks, to see exactly that scenario. Are they participating in PPP? Are they accepting new customers, or are they operating under any sort of limitation or restriction? And so we're trying to gather that information so that I can talk more intelligently to the business community as well. And I know there's also a bunch of banks that have decided that they want to participate, and so we are working with our headquarters in DC to onboard those banks as quickly as possible as well. So
if you could get to my office a list of willing lenders, willing participating banks, that would be helpful, and I can share those with my constituents. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, I think, and I'm not alone in our efforts. Our other district offices are trying to do their own, intel gathering as well, so that we can better work, we can give you, potential borrowers better guidance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, okay. Another question that people are submitting is how this PPP program deals with 501c3 organizations.
Yes, so if you are a nonprofit, and specifically a 501c3 or a 501c19, which is the veterans organizations, you are eligible to participate in PPP. So you can, look at your payroll costs and those non-payroll expenses and submit an application.
So let's see. Another people are wondering, this kind of touches on the turnaround, which I know we said is a little hard to predict right now, but if people have submitted like an EIDL application or this PPP application and haven't heard anything for a while, should they be worried?
No, not necessarily. I mean, PPP is so new. I mean, the banks just started taking applications on Friday. So I definitely, if you haven't heard yet, I definitely wouldn't, it's not time to panic by any means. You know, the banks need a little bit time to digest, and they're doing their, you know, it's a very streamlined process, but they still need to do a little bit of their due diligence to make sure that the numbers that you have and the supporting documents kind of align. So I know they're actively going through that and doing what they need to do to be, you know, responsible lenders. But as far as the EIDL program goes, yes, I know that that's also been, you know, not getting the money on the street as fast as everyone would like. I have two things that I do advise people. If you applied for EIDL before March 30th, you have not gone back into the application, the new online application, to apply for the EIDL advance of up to 10,000, I do recommend you do that, because one, that gets you into that queue and where you might get some funding a little bit faster. It will not jeopardize anything you've done prior, like your application that you may have submitted, you know, two and a half weeks ago will still be in the processing queue. But this is a way to hopefully get you a little bit of support faster. And because the EIDL advance was new per the CARES Act, we weren't able to offer that until March 30th. So that's one thing I am recommending businesses, even if you've already got a loan authorization number or application number, still go into the EIDL advance if you're interested in that particular aspect of the program as well, and go ahead and submit that. You can do that today.
Great. Another question. People are wondering, if we apply for the PPP to cover our payroll costs, can we also apply for the EIDL for 6 months operating expenses and then exclude 2 months of salaries we hope to get from the PPP? That's a little complicated. It should be up on your screen, but a lot of people liked it, so I want to make sure we address it.
Yes, so we did get clarification. Like I said, you can apply for both. Again, please just don't duplicate the benefit, you know, duplicate what you're applying for under both.
Is that clear, Katie?
I think so, but if you feel like it's unclear, please say so in the comments and we can address it further.
You have the advantage of seeing the questions, and Julie and I don't. I think the important thing is you can't duplicate uses. So you can apply for multiple programs, but they can't be, the monies can't be used to do the same things. Is that correct, Julie?
Yes, yes.
Okay, here is another question. Are companies that are partially owned by a foreign citizen but a legal U.S. resident eligible to have their business apply to PPP?
I'm presuming it's a U.S. based business. So yes, if you're a U.S.
I know the questioner on this one. It's a U.S. based business. They employ a lot of people in the 5th Congressional District, but because one of the owners is a foreign owner, they're concerned that they can't participate. And the reality is, irrespective of the partnership, the people who are going to lose their jobs are U.S. citizens.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, we would, you know, probably look at the specifics behind that. What is the percentage of ownership, and to also make sure that there's no potential affiliation. Like if the foreign owner also has a company somewhere else, and we just want to make sure there's no affiliation between those. But generally speaking, yes, as long as it's a U.S. based business, you should be able to apply.
Great. Okay, here is another kind of specific question. They say, please discuss the criteria for PPP loan forgiveness regarding headcount before and after the loan. Does it only apply to people being paid, or will you count terminated people too? That would make it very hard to have the loan forgiven if we have a reduced headcount in the 8-week turnaround period.
Right. Well, remember that the goal of this program is to retain your level of employees or be able to rehire them if you've had to let them go for any number of reasons. So they're going to look at what you did in the prior year or prior 12 months and look at what what your payroll costs were, and then that's how they're going to help determine the number. And there's actually a couple scenarios that you might want to take a look at in the interim rule. It actually does a couple hypotheticals and shows you what the calculations look like. So I know there's also some questions about how quickly you have to bring people back if you let them go in order for the loan to still be forgiven, and still working to get some more definitive guidance on that particular aspect of the question. But we are going to look at what your payroll costs and what you reported last year, and try to apply that moving forward. If you have situations where you let people go before the February 15th date, that could be a different scenario. But if you let them go as a result of the COVID-19 issues, I would have that conversation with your lender to explain what you're doing and see how they want to structure the loan potentially.
That's been a pretty hot topic, Julie, on our caucus conference calls. And it's been explained to me by the committee chairman who wrote that particular provision, that there's going to be a lot of flexibility in that final determination, because a lot of people are going to be forced to lay people off because of this pandemic. So there could be some time when they don't have those numbers, but if they bring them back by a date certain, and it doesn't even have to be the same employees, it just
Right.
has to be the same number of employees. So you're right. Talk to your lender on that, because it was written in a way that took that into consideration, and it shouldn't be a prohibiting factor.
All right, next question. People are wondering, how is the EIDL loan amount determined? Is there some sort of formula, or is it just what the applicant asked, like the amount that the applicant asked for?
Yeah. So when you complete the EIDL application, that is the one thing that you will notice. There is no box that says, I would like to borrow X number of dollars. So what they do is the loan analyst, you do answer a series of questions and put in some financial information, again, looking to what you did last year. And if you don't have a full year's worth if you weren't operating for a full year, that's okay. You just put in what you have, and the loan analyst will probably follow up with you to ask them for additional information or questions. But they're going to look at your revenue. They're going to ask for like cost of goods sold or other expenses. They're going to ask for number of employees and a couple other buckets that I don't remember off the top of my head right now. But fill in that information. And they're going to use that as a baseline to do a calculation to say, okay, this is what the business expenses were, this is what the firm normally did, and here's where there's potential shortfall, and they're going to reduce that to some sort of monthly calculation and then times it by 6, I believe. I believe they're going out 6 months right now for working capital, and then come up with the number that way, which I realize is probably not fully answering your question right now. But the short answer is that SBA will be doing the initial calculation. They will come back to you. So you will have an opportunity to talk to the loan officer before the loan is closed.
And Julie, are pass-through businesses eligible for this as well?
Pass-through in?
Someone who has a business and it's part of your entire portfolio.
If I would say perhaps, but we'd probably want to look at the specific scenario and see exactly what's going on in that situation, because I can imagine some hypotheticals where it would be fine and some where it might not be. So.
Okay.
All right, this next question has a lot of traffic. A lot of people are wanting to answer, but I'm going to read the whole thing, so hopefully it can be clear. Great. So people are wanting much more guidance on the forgiveness parameters for the PPP. They're worried about making decisions on paying rent versus conserving cash if they don't know what the parameters are. They want to know, when will we know these? Will it be a fraction based on this year versus last year, or is it just a fraction between payroll and non-payroll? They feel like they've received conflicting guidance on this over the last few days and would like some clarity.
Yeah. So from the forgiveness perspective, let's just say the whole amount that you're looking to borrow is $100,000. So at least 75% of that needs to be attributable to payroll costs. And up to 25% of that can be used for the non-payroll expenses, and it's narrowly defined as interest on mortgage, rent, and utilities. So looking at the payroll definition, payroll cost definition, see all the things you can include. It's not just, salaries or wages, bonuses, and that kind of stuff. It can also include expenses you have related to payroll. So maybe it's health insurance premium costs, or other insurance costs, or retirement benefits, sick leave, vacation. All of those kind of associated expenses can all be bundled into that number. So you're going to look at the wages, and then you're going to look at that. And remember, the forgivable portion is only up to 8 weeks of those expenses. So they're going to look at what you did last year and what your expenses were, and they're going to use that. That's a good jumping off point. But for the actual forgivable portion, it's only up to 8 weeks of these expenses, and at least 75% of that total amount has to be directly to payroll costs, and only 25% can be for these other non-payroll expenses. I don't know if that made that as clear as mud, or if that helped, but.
Bottom line, 75% has to go to the employees, correct?
Yes, or their associated costs, yeah,
Right.
Yes.
Julie, your answer kind of touched on a question that a lot of people have had. You mentioned that it has the 8-week sort of limit for these funds. A lot of people are asking, if this shelter in place continues, past that point, will that deadline be extended?
Well, this is the way the legislation is written right now, and so we'll have to wait and see what happens with any future legislation. So.
Yeah, again, I think Congress is going to be as flexible as we need to be. We recognize that there's no start and stop to this clearly defined any place. Remember, everything we're doing is, it's like we're building the plane as we're flying it. This is new to everybody, and this is a monumental legislative endeavor and achievement. So there's certain to be things that we have to do in regard to tweaking the existing program and making sure it applies to whatever lays ahead.
Mm-hmm. And I also encourage people to remember, as the EIDL program, and if you have existing debt, there's either debt forgiveness or deferment. So it's the PPP is getting a lot of publicity, but it's not the only product or program that's available. And you might want to look at other programs too, to see if that will support you, especially as we go beyond 2-3 months.
On that note, Julie, on the EIDL, there's some limitations for agriculture. So small farmers, as I understand it, they don't have access to everything somebody else has, but there are other programs available. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So if you are engaged purely in farming, like just agriculture, I mean, you grow and maybe resell, and you don't have any sort of manufacturing or retail component to what you do, then you may not be eligible for EIDL. But we also work with our the farm services and some of the other USDA and other groups out there to try to get you into those programs that might be more advantageous for you if you're purely just a farmer and just a grower, or something where you wouldn't maybe not qualify for EIDL, but there are some other programs out there. And I have to double check with the state of California, because I don't believe that they have a restriction on farmers, but I do want to double check their iBank program. That also might be another avenue.
All right, here is a question. it's a scenario that someone has written out, but I think it's representative of probably a lot of people's experiences, so I'm going to read through it. So they said, we closed our facility consistent with the shelter-in-place order on March 16th. We decided to pay all of our employees fully for the first 2 weeks of the closure, not knowing how long this would last. After 2 weeks, we were forced to furlough most of our staff, though we agreed to cover health benefits for 3 months through June 30th. If we are approved for a PPP loan, which we applied for the first day they were available, when does the 8-week period begin? Does the clock for forgivable portion start with the origination of the loan, or can it be applied retroactively to include those first 2 full weeks of pay we provided? Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, where does the 8 weeks begin, and can they use the funds retroactively?
Yeah, the program is counting, employees, and it is retroactive to February 15th. And I think, I kind of always struggle to answer this question, because I think if you get the money in, if you still have these people on payroll, this is just additional funding to support that effort. So I don't know that you have to tie it, it's this 8-week period necessarily. If you're bringing employees back, the one piece that I want to get clarification, so I don't give anybody, bad information, is if there is a deadline certain by which you have to bring all of those employees back in order to have the full amount forgiven. So that's the piece I want to clarify before I say, oh, as long as you bring your employees back by X date, you'll be good. Because I just want to make sure I know all the parameters on that before stating that. But I think it's, I would talk to the lender, because just make sure that they don't have a different understanding, or this question that we need to elevate for additional clarity. But I think when you get the money in, you can support your team.
Okay, Katie, on the questions that need, the answers that need more clarity, and obviously there's going to be some questions that we're not going to be able to get to today. How are we going to make sure that everybody who's asked a question gets an answer and gets clarity on any of the answers that were given?
Well, I think one thing we've done in the past with these kinds of interactions with constituents is we can take down all of these questions and try and post answers to them, or maybe we have everyone's email addresses that have participated if they want to email their questions to the SBA help.thompson email that they've been corresponding with. We can get them answers. I know also there's a section on Congressman Thompson's website that's just all about how we can help small businesses, and might have a few of these more frequently asked questions. I know Julie mentioned a few resources that have the frequently asked questions as well. So I think maybe one thing we can do, Congressman Thompson, if you're okay with this, is just sort of compile a list of resources for people. And then if their questions aren't answered in those resources, they can email that SBA.help email, and we can help them.
I just want to make sure that everybody who's in the queue, even if they don't get a chance, if their question's not read, they get a response to their question. And any that need, any of the answers that need more clarity, we're able to provide that. So let's, so I'm okay telling people that's what's going to happen, right? Okay.
It's going to happen then.
All right.
What he says goes.
And we continue between SBA and Treasury as we figure out, some additional rules. As more questions come in and we're fleshing out, we're putting out those FAQs as well. So I do encourage people to check back to the website, frequently if they haven't seen their question get addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, depending on how long they take. Okay, so this one says, this is kind of touching on what we already touched on, so maybe this will help clarify a bit. They said, we have incurred a lot of payroll costs already, including 2 weeks of pay after our shelter-in-place order came out, as well as vacation payouts. Can we use any of the PPP loan for costs we've already incurred?
Yes, because it's retroactive back to February 15th. But again, remember, and we have to look at your specific scenario, because the purpose of this is to either keep, retain your employees you have, or to be able to bring them back, or at least the same number of employees. So there's a couple factors in play there.
Okay, perfect. let's see. Again, just because we're getting the question a lot, so I want to make sure it's clear. People are still wondering if they don't have any employees, are they eligible for these programs?
Yes, whether you're sole proprietor, even if you're a 1099 contractor, you are eligible for both sets of program. So I would encourage you to apply. Under the PPP, there is the cap, if you will, for each. No employee can have salary or pay, if you will, compensation greater than $100,000 under this program. So if you're an owner and you're taking more than that, it will be capped at that, but it doesn't mean you can't apply for the up to 100, whatever the portion, 8 weeks of the $100,000 would amount to.
Okay, awesome. So I think we kind of have to cut off questions now just so we have a few minutes to wrap up. But as Congressman Thompson mentioned, I'm going to document all of these questions and we're going to do everything we can to get answers out to everybody.
Okay, Katie, thank you. And Julie, what do you think about doing another one of these next week? Would that work for you?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely will work with your team to set it up.
Because there's still, there's a couple hundred people on the webinar and there's a couple hundred questions that haven't been asked. So maybe we can set a time next week and do another one. I think it's just really good to be able to get this information out, and clarify questions. So Julie, thank you very much. As I said last week when we did this, you were a rock star then, you're even better now. So it's really heartening to know that we have real capable public servants working for us, and this is going to be very helpful to everyone. Katie, thanks for doing a good job monitoring this, and thank you to everyone who participated. Again, we'll get clarity, we'll get some answers to the questions that were in, and then we'll take another shot at this next week. This is a very tough time for everybody, and I know you're going through very difficult times, and just know that we're all focused on trying to make it work the best that we can, and we'll get through this, we'll get through it together. So thank you all very much. And Julie, you have any parting words?
No, I like to tell people, don't, especially with the EIDL program, don't disqualify yourself by not applying. It definitely behooves you to apply. And we're trying to help, as many businesses as we can. And I know this is a scary, frustrating, and anxiety-driven time. And let us try to help you and leverage our resource partners too. They're there to help you not only with financing issues, but any other business issues you might have, whether there's some legal considerations or other things that you want assistance with. So you don't have to do it alone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that's the end. So like we said, if you have questions, you can email the sbahelp.thompson@mail.house.gov, the email that you've been getting this information about this call from. You can also call the offices. All of our phone numbers are on Congressman Thompson's website. And sounds like we're doing it again next week. So see you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.